Spring games in the books, and let's just say this Iowa passing offense might finally have some bite. Are we looking at the start of a new era in Iowa City?
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. I've been covering the Iowa Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the air, on the radio across the state of Iowa, including currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network. You can hear me each weekday from noon until 2 on the Iowa Sports Radio Network with stations in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, the Quad Cities, Sioux City, and our flagship 106.3 KXNO in Des Moines. This episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Here we go. It is a great time. Football in the books with spring football wrapping up our only opportunity of the spring to get a glimpse at this football team. We'll talk plenty about that. We're going to get in a little bit later on to the Iowa baseball team. Another sweep for the Hawkeyes as they up in Indiana. A tight one on Friday night, followed up by a couple of just absolutely mammoth performances from the Iowa baseball team as they solidify themselves at the top of the Big Ten, but also really improving their resume for the NCAA tournament. We'll get into that a little bit later on. The Iowa softball team also putting themselves in consideration to maybe be a tournament team themselves. We'll talk a little bit more on the diamond on the ladies' side with the softball team coming up. Plus, we'll be joined by Tom Kaker, a little bonus edition here of Locked On Hawkeyes. But we begin with what we saw on Saturday at Kinnick Stadium as Iowa opened it up and an ability to see the guys one time here during the spring. Now, of course, we would love to be able to see a little bit more practice and have those kind of opportunities, but a lot of takeaways to get through and a lot of things to digest here for this Iowa football team. As I talked about, you start at the top, and I know, and I get it, and I know there's plenty of you out there that are not going to believe that this Iowa offense, and specifically this Iowa passing game, you're not going to believe it is different until you actually see it in a game. Completely understand. And if you're somebody that needs that evidence, you're just not going to go on a hope and a prayer and maybe a little bit of practice. If that's not enough for you, I can't talk you off that ledge. I completely get it. In a lot of instances, I'm right there with you. You get burned so many times throughout the course of it. As a fan, you get set up for failure. You're loosey with the football, and Charlie Brown comes running up again, and it gets pulled away. We've been there as fans. We completely understand why many of you are that way. And like I said, I'm that way for many things, but just talking to more people involved, just the glimpses from Saturday, people that know football, that aren't just going to give you sunshine when it's not there, have continued to say that this is different. What we're seeing offensively and in the passing game, it is different than what we've gone through. And Tim Lester has shown an ability in year number one of making great improvements and being able to do it, not being able to throw the football. You look at the quarterback room and the guys that we saw Saturday and what you saw from Hank Brown, and definitely a live arm, good body control, good athleticism. 6'4", he can sling it. There were shaky moments, no doubt. Jackson Stratton, the guy that we saw come in there, basically hair on fire against UCLA, and because of injuries, because of other circumstances, him being thrust into the mix, a guy that they just pulled off the scrap heap, basically. It got him to walk on, thinking that he was going to be your fourth, fifth, sixth quarterback, and he ends up playing. I'm played a couple times for you in big moments. And seeing that guy that we saw last year that just at times was overwhelmed to what we saw in this practice. I think that says a lot. Who's going to win the backup role? Who's going to be the backup after Mark Gronowski? Is it going to be Stratton or is it going to be Hank Brown? Too early to tell. But just seeing those kind of improvements, I think gets you excited. It gets you excited thinking about what Hank Brown's going to look like when we get to September and the start of the season, because you look at just the raw material that you're working with, that's a lot. And of course, Mark Gronowski, ahead of schedule, now throwing the football. A week ago, he was throwing a Nerf football around, now throwing a real football, coming back off that shoulder surgery. Guy that's thrown for over 10,000 yards in his career, 100 touchdowns passing, the physicality that he plays with, and a guy that fits. Not false bravado, but a real leader. Not a fake one, a real leader. And a guy that you're going to go to battle with. That's what Iowa has in Mark Gronowski. But the guys that were there, the guys that were able to play, are slinging it and making plays. Go back to the last time we had a glimpse, last August, and just how hideous it was with Cade McNamara trying to figure things out. It was awful. It was brutal. Well, he's not there anymore. He's at East Tennessee. And this group of quarterbacks looked immensely better than he did in that open practice before the beginning of last year. Tim Lester's teaching, but he's also getting his guys. He's getting guys that he knows can work with their system. And it goes hand in hand with the wide receiver group that is deep. Doesn't have top-end talent. Doesn't have guys that are elite playmakers. No. However, the depth that they have built at the wide receiver spot, in a game where you don't see Jacob Gill. We don't. Dependable, solid, trusty wide receiver in Jacob Gill. But not just him. Reese Vanderzee, before the injuries hit last year, how good he is. Now we see Caden Weegan, and I can't remember where I heard this. Something that popped up last week. I don't remember if it was in a conversation or just reading it somewhere. And apologies if it was something that somebody had come up with source material. But I just remember, in order to get Weegan back, they kind of had to talk him into, we're going to use you, not just as a returner, not just run a jet sweep and just run, we're not going to give you the ball. No, we're actually going to get you involved. And you saw that in the practice. You saw them doing different things to get him involved. And remember, they're doing all these things. And again, it's not to say that it was perfect, because of course it wasn't. But for some of the dregs of spring practices and August practices, the open practices that we've seen in the past, and just how absolutely putrid, just hideous the offenses looked, this was a breath of fresh air. This was different than what we're used to. And they did it basically missing 4 out of their 5 starters, at least the spots that you anticipate they're going to be starting this year on the offensive line. Jennings Dunker, out. Logan Jones, sitting out. You had Pieper in there. We'll kind of see going forward, what this is going to look like. Bryce George is going to add a little bit of depth to that offensive tackle room as he left tackle. We'll see. Jennings Dunker now coming off this surgery, getting things cleaned up. What's he going to look like in August? And even with that, even with an offensive line with a lot of different faces, they're pretty good. Good things. Defensively, also saw a little bit more, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here throughout the course of the week. Just some opening thoughts and opening statements, and I think the biggest conversation has to be this passing game. We saw the immense improvement last year in the run game. And yes, you don't have Caleb Johnson. I get that. Kamari Moulton, though, very good. Talented guy. Jazz Patterson, number 2, solid. And then what we saw from McNeil. I think everydayers, if you're an everyday listener to Lock On Hawkeyes, my affinity for Brevin Dahl. And Brev, I know it killed him not to be able to be out there dealing with a hamstring injury and had a few other physical ailments that were happening throughout the course of spring. He wants to be out there getting reps. This is an exciting time. Yeah, the schedule's going to be tough. And we're going to talk about that a lot coming up throughout the summer and just how difficult it's going to be for Iowa to get to a mark, to get to a 10-win season. But if you would have told me at the end of last year, in January things wrap up after the Missouri game, that after spring football, I'd be here thinking that there is a path. That's not the most likely. But this team, I believe, is going to be better than the 7.5 win total that FanDuel has. That this team's going to be better than a lot of the pundits think. They're going to be in games and they're going to do it throwing the football at times. What a world. But I think that's the world we're living in right now in Hawkeyeville. We continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Tom Kaker had an opportunity to talk with him. Little bonus edition. We'll have a full episode out for you on Monday. We'll get that to you. But before that, Tom Kaker had a chance to talk to him a little bit before, but a lot of good information. If you're into the recruiting, he's got you covered there. Some of the big targets that I was after, both football-wise and basketball-wise. We'll talk transfer portal and a whole lot more with Tom Kaker. He joins us next. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team, the Timberwolves. Now, T-Wolves, a big win on Friday, looking for more coming up on Sunday, or diving into player props, they got you covered. Plus, after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. That's right. Don't have to get those same-game parlays in before the game. See how it's going. Like the way a team's playing, maybe like the way a player's playing. You can hit on that with your live prop bets, all on FanDuel. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today with FanDuel online. FanDuel.com.
Listening to Tim Lester and Phil Parker, and I don't think Lester meant to throw Brian Ferentz under the bus, but when he let it not slip out, when he offered up that the receivers, they're running, and do so playing the position much more further now, and the reason being that they're taught coverages. I was just blown away, Tom, that they hadn't been up until this point. But that was maybe my biggest takeaway listening to some of the recaps. How about you?
That was an indictment of Brian or indictment of Kelton Copeland?
Yeah, either one, right? A little both, probably.
Maybe both. Or the value and the importance they put on that in that previous offense.
Yeah,
maybe as well. Probably a mix of everything. But I'll tell you, I've heard just really good things about the way the offense has looked, and that Phil and Seth Wallace have gotten a little frustrated because they can't dominate the way they usually do.
Wow.
in the spring, and that they've kind of gotten burned a few times, and they have not been totally pleased by all this. So, I'm pleasantly, and again, they're doing it with, Sully was there for part of the spring, and now it's Hank Brown. They haven't even got to Gronowski yet, who's throwing, what did Tim say, Nerf balls, I think, the other day. That they were throwing Nerf footballs or something. So he's getting there, and they're getting closer to getting him back, and then we'll see what they got.
So you mentioned Sullivan, just real quick. He's off to Tulane. Was there legitimate interest with Michigan?
It seemed like there was something there,
okay,
but I think Sully wanted to go somewhere to play.
Right.
And I wouldn't have gone to Michigan because it's just a matter of time before they go to Bryce Underwood, right?
Seems like it. Yeah, they paid him a lot of money.
Yeah, well, Larry Ellison did.
Well, true. Yeah.
And Dave Portnoy.
Yeah.
They paid
both
a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah, I think they chipped in to the total there. So yeah, I don't think he would have really enjoyed that situation, just because it doesn't seem like it's going to be a good situation for him to start, and he wants to go start, and probably Tulane probably offers that opportunity.
Going to get that shot. Hank Brown's been getting some buzz. Is it a foregone conclusion that he's going to be the backup, but we know Gronowski's going to be the starter, or are we going to maybe learn a little bit more of how that's going and the buzz that's happening in those backup positions?
Yeah, and I've kind of been championing the Hank Brown bandwagon for a while, and I think he's going to be the backup this year. Interesting, they added a quarterback this week too, with Jeremy Heklinski, who's Uncle Jeff was a a pretty good quarterback back in the day. Though he spent some time at Western Illinois as well. So, yeah, they've at least got it's so fascinating to me the way the quarterback, and I think it's emblematic of what is going on in college football today, that the guys that are in the room today were not in that room a year ago. None of them.
That's wild.
I mean, Shaggy is like the old head in that room, and he got here in June last year. It's crazy how things can turn over, but I think that position in particular is emblematic of the state of college football today.
Another guy that's seemingly when Trent and I are speaking, well, we're going to move to the other side of the ball. I guess we'll get back to offense. Every time we have somebody on that covers Iowa, we keep mentioning Bryce Hawthorne.
Yes.
Tell us about Bryce Hawthorne. I know you're keeping your eye on him tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I have him written down. Just heard a lot of good things about him.
Defensive line, by the way, yeah.
Yeah, defensive tackle, and that's a need position for Iowa. They've got Aaron Graves, but after that, it's a question mark. Mm-hmm. So they went out and added Hawthorne from South Dakota State. He was a teammate of Gronowski, and then also brought in Jonah Pace, the big D tackle from Central Michigan. And I think everybody kind of came into this thinking, well, Pace is probably going to slot in there maybe as the starter or the third guy, and Hawthorne's a little younger, and he'll take some more time. And it doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen. It seems like maybe Hawthorne's going to jump in there. I've heard that Pittman's been a little dinged up, so that might precipitate us seeing a lot of those two transfers tomorrow in the final practice of the spring.
With the advent of the cash position, they don't need the same amount of linebackers, but boy, they got a ton of them over there. But nobody really with experience. We saw Jade Harrell a couple years ago at Wrigley Field on that goal line stop. He was in there as an extra linebacker. But Shire, we've heard the kid's name for 5 years now. He's just never been healthy. Yeah. What do you think of linebacker? And have you heard anything about any of those young guys they brought in a year ago that might be able to help out right away this year?
Yeah, have heard a lot about some of those young guys, but I'll stick with the main guys. Yeah, Shire's been the guy that, and I've kind of thrown this out there just as kind of a bold prediction. If he stays healthy, he's the guy that surprises everybody and is in one of the all Big Ten teams this year. I just think everybody has told me that he's that good when he's been healthy, but it's just been staying healthy has been the issue. I look at the three redshirt freshmen and just super high on all those guys. Preston Reese, Jaden Harrell was telling us he's already set the squat record in the weight room for a linebacker, and he's a redshirt freshman. So that's pretty impressive given some of the guys that have been in that room before. So I'm keeping an eye on him in the middle. Dirk Weiskopf might get some playing time this year, especially in special teams. But and Cam Buffington, the other guy who's really good. I know Seth Wallace is super high on those guys, and Goucher and Cooney, the two true freshmen, he really likes those guys. And just watching those guys kind of run around the field, boy, both those guys just kind of glide. They've got to fill out a little bit more, but boy, you can just tell they're going to be good football players.
Back to the offensive side of the ball, Sam Phillips is a guy that you're going to be paying attention to. I'll be anxious to hear, a report on all of the receivers after listening to Lester speak earlier in the week. But Sam Phillips is a guy that a lot of people are excited to see.
Yeah, I'm just because he's the new guy,
right? And
the guy that came in with the reputation, and he's got some production behind him. So he's built kind of differently because he's small. He's 5'7", 5'8". Tops, but he's kind of built like a fire plug, and just seems like he moves pretty well in space, and an experienced guy that knows what he's doing out there. So I suspect he's going to get out there in that mix. It's so weird though to have like this a wide receiver room that has like talent and depth for Iowa. It's such an odd thing to feel like they've done that, but they've been able to move down TJ Washington back to running back after having to move over to wide receiver last year because of numbers, and just the overhaul that Tim Lester has done with this offense is just it's stunning right now.
Another guy that's been moving, Alex Moda, hasn't been healthy.
Yeah.
Started wide receiver, really great athlete coming out of Marion, and just hasn't been out there. Now he's over defensively, and at minimum, Phil Parker brought up his name, and you know this, Tom. You hear when Phil brings up a guy unprompted, at least it gets your curiosity up, right?
Yep, it does. It always does, because Phil doesn't put your name out there unless it's unless he's seen something from you. Moda's thing too has been staying healthy. He just I can't think of the number of times I've seen him in a walking boot. I mean, it seems like that was like a whole year where I just every time I'd see him, he'd be in a walking boot, hadn't been able to get out there, and came in as a wide receiver. Now they're testament defensive back, and it's a position they could probably use some depth for sure, especially at corner. I know they're trying to get land a couple more corners here in the portal. If they can do that, that would be good. But I think Phil is not, just based on the way he was talking the other day. It seems like Paul is probably their top corner right now, but that's to be determined. I think he's looking for guys to really emerge this year.
Tom Kaker from HawkeyeReport.com is our guest. So tomorrow, Tom, I believe the event is scheduled to begin at 10:45, but probably good advice to get there a little early, because hasn't it started kind of early in the at times on some years?
Oh yeah, and there's guys out there moving around and doing stuff, and there's always things going on before 10:45. So I would tell people to get there 10:15 or so, and you can see the guys warming up and getting after a little bit, and and you can watch all those great kickers and punters.
There you go. Why not?
Got to do it. As Iowa also brought in a transfer portal long snapper. I mean, just such a Hawkeye thing, right? Bring it in, a long snapper in the portal. That's what the Hawkeyes do.
It's what they do, and they need one, because Ike's been doing all the long snapping pretty much. I think Michael Burt, backup tight end, has been helping him out at snapping a little bit and not doing too bad, according to Drew Stevens. But that you look at that possession at that special teams group, and Drew Stevens is probably one of the 5 best place kickers in college football, I would think, this year. Caden Weegan might be the best return man in the country. I mean, he certainly was best in the Big Ten last year. And Reese Dockin is 20 pounds heavier. And from what I was told, somebody at practice the other day, they told me that he was just hitting bomb after bomb after bomb at practice. So he may take another giant leap forward, and he was pretty darn good last year. So I think that's a group that's, boy, hard to say there's a weak spot in that group right now.
Basketball wise, Tom, what's going on in the men's program?
Yeah, they're still looking to fill out that roster, and I saw a picture of Ben McCollum up with Jaden Kuhn, the kid from Northwest Iowa, who's a 2026 kid, but name the maybe watch as a guard from High Point, Keza Giffa, who's visiting USC, who just lost their point guard. I wonder if that's going to be a bigger deciding factor for him, is that there might be more of an opportunity to be the point guard somewhere instead of being, backup behind. But you know how many minutes? I mean, we saw Drake last year. How many minutes Bennett Sturts played?
Right. Every one of them.
he barely leaves the floor. So there's just not a lot of opportunities for a backup point guard. But they do need a backup point guard. So as always, 2 things decide where kids go today.
Mm-hmm.
One is
money and playing time,
and the other is dollars.
Yep.
And dollars might be ahead of playing time
Yes.
these days.
You're probably right. Yep.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. Hey, speaking of basketball, so Tate Sage, kid that was committed to Drake.
Oklahoma's right.
Yep.
Oklahoma kid, yeah, like a 6'7" kind of small forward combo guard type.
Yep.
Everyone thought he was committed to Iowa.
Yeah, is he or isn't he? Yeah.
Are they working on a release from Drake? Is Drake maybe dragging their foot? What's going on here? Because this one felt like it was going to be quick, and we're pushing May now.
Yeah, and he had told us he was going to do it this week, and now he said, well, they've asked him to push it back to next week. I think they just want to get other news out there and just kind of and slide this one in there. You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, we're going to do this, but it's going to be after we get all of our other business done, I think is what they're hoping to do. So he's going to end up being a Hawkeye, but it's just I think it's a timing issue more than anything else.
That's Tom Kaker at HawkeyeReport.com joining us. Appreciate Tom and his time, as always, is trying to figure out what's going on in that transfer portal. Always can be a difficult situation. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes, taking a look at the Iowa baseball team. Big series against Indiana. Iowa wins them all. First place in the Big Ten. Hawkeyes, how they got it done on the Diamond X. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. I use Game Time. I've used it for a bunch. I've used it, in fact, for playoff tickets before. When my Minnesota Twins were in the playoffs a couple of years ago, was able to snag tickets last minute and was able to save. Another thing that I love, though, about the Game Time app, the all-in pricing. No more surprise fees at checkout. You think you get a great deal, and then those fees add up, and that deal isn't so great anymore. Not the case with Game Time. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. And a shout out to you everydayers being with us each and every day. A little bit of a bonus episode here with Tom Kaker joining us. We will have a full episode out to you on Monday and a deeper breakdown of what we saw at spring practice. But before that, let's take a look back at the weekend that was as Iowa polishes off Indiana, another 10-run limit run rule win against the Hoosiers after having to walk it off with the safety squeeze on Friday night. They come back and just pulverize the Hoosiers the last 2 days. So Iowa now is up to 31-12 overall, but for NCAA tournament purposes, they're 29-12 because the two non-D1 victories do not count on their resume for the NCAA tournament. Now 20-4 in the Big Ten this season. Absolutely incredible after the sweep in this one. Iowa's RPI has jumped up to now number 61 in the country. Non-conference strength of schedule, not great, 270. That remains the concern. Good news, though, is Michigan moved back into quad one victory territory. So Iowa's sweep that they had last weekend against the Wolverines, those become 3 quad one victories, and Iowa 3-0 now on the season in quadrant one. Quad two, 7-4. Another good mark. The Demerits, 3 losses against quad 3 teams and 5 losses against quad 4. That is what is really dragging down that Iowa RPI at this point. The opportunities continue. After last week dropping, though, the midweek game, can't allow that to happen this week. And it's Illinois State coming up this week. Illinois State, decent Missouri Valley team. It's the reality. After losing to Western Illinois, you can't afford any more of these. Iowa then goes on the road for Washington after that. That'll be their trip next weekend. It'll be the last road series of the year for Iowa. Then a midweek game next week on the road at UIC before finishing up with that series here in Des Moines against third-ranked Oregon State, and the Beavers might even be higher after we get through the weekend. And then they wrap up at home against Oregon. That will end the regular season with that one. Mentioned Oregon State, though. They did lose over the weekend. Their series against Nebraska lost 2 out of 3 to the Huskers there. But that's what's in front of Iowa baseball. Big sweep against the Hoosiers. doing it with pitching, timely hitting. They just talk about this group and how they're having fun. You can definitely see it watching this Iowa baseball team. And speaking of what's happening on the diamond, over on the softball side of things, the Iowa softball team has solidified their slot in the Big Ten tournament, and they got a really solid opportunity that they very well could be also playing their way into the NCAA tournament. You look at their resume, it's a lot different than the baseball team. Now, what helps them more than anything is that victory that they have against UCLA. That is a monster victory. UCLA, a top 10 team, a power program, no doubt about it. And getting that victory goes a long, long way. Also, the win that they had earlier this season against Nebraska on that Sunday after losing the first two games. So Iowa sits at 12-7 in the Big Ten. Again, solidly in the tournament. It'll be 12 teams that'll qualify for the softball tournament. An RPI now of 52, but 4 quad 1 victories for the Iowa women. And they don't have as many of those bad losses that we talked about with the baseball side. 6-1 in quad 3, 12-1 in quad 4, but a 4-10 mark in quad 1, 9-5 in quad 2. I think there's a real possibility we could see the softball team back in the NCAA tournament. What a turnaround that would be, and what the tumult that's been happening inside the program this year. Really good stuff this spring for Iowa baseball and Iowa softball. Thanks for being with us here, Locked On Hawkeyes, your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. I got you covered on the Hawkeye front each and every day. We will have a full episode for you on Monday to kick off the week. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen today. And for your second listen, make sure you check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Speaking of that, I'll be on with Brian this week on the Portal, talking some Hawkeye football with him. So make sure you put that one on your to-do list coming up this week. Thanks for being with us. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. 5-star reviews on the podcast side. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.